a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
You think I'm not nervous? It's going viral. Anyhow.
Hello, I'm Shawn the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Those of you that are longtime subscribers will remember that this is my mom, Helen. Hello, Mom.
Hi.
And we
It's been a year.
It's been a year, yeah. And we together have read this novel by Wendell Berry, Hannah Coulter. I read the paper copy, and Mom, you read it on script.
I read it. Yes, I did. Mm-hmm.
And we both loved it.
Loved it.
Yeah. Do you give star ratings? I gave it 5 stars out of 5.
I would give it a 5 out of 5.
This novel was published in 2004, and Wendell Berry, it's my first novel by Wendell Berry, you too.
Mine too, yeah, I've never read him before.
And he was born in 1934, so he wrote this when he was 70.
Yeah.
He's still alive. I don't know if he's still writing.
I think he's still writing too.
Yeah, he's 80.
That's what it is.
84.
Yeah.
I didn't know until I was almost finished that this is a series of novels, all with same characters in this small town in Kentucky.
I look forward to reading more. Yeah.
And
But I think probably I related to it because it's a lot about the kind of life we lived on a farm. And
my mom and my dad are farmers, for those of you that don't know, and not in Kentucky, but farmers.
In Saskatchewan.
Yeah. So why don't you start with that? What did you relate to?
Well, I really related to, the changes in the farming, and he talked about that because Hannah Coulter she goes right through from the late 30s right through into the 80s, and of course we farmed from the 60s through into the 90s, and so all the changes that took place
up to now,
continuing
now,
continuing now. So there was a lot of things about that and about the farming that I just loved. A little different than ours because this was mixed farming that he was talking about. So they always had animals and grain and plants. So it was ranching and agriculture, but it was good. Tobacco farming, yes.
I didn't even think about this, but you can see our farm on the painting in the background. That is...
Right back up, yeah.
That is a painting, I want to get out of the way, of our farm in Saskatchewan.
The trees are the house.
The trees in the house, and there's Dad. Oops.
And this is a field of flax.
It's a field of flax.
That you're seeing in the painting.
And there's Dad in the purple turtleneck sweater, and Mom and
granddaughter Amy and grandson Troy.
Many years ago, and that was painted by a cousin.
Yeah.
We actually have 2 copies of this, two versions of this painting, one without the grandchildren, one without my niece and nephew. So this is the one that is in the living room. Mm-hmm. Now I got to get us back here. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty cool.
The book, of course, it talks about farming, but it really does talk about the relationships of people, and I think that was probably the most appealing part of it. As people go through life, as we all go through life, we experience many things. We experienced joy, sorrow, and so many different things. We have families and children, and then we lose people that we love, and so on and so forth. And he does all of that with Hannah. She goes through that whole life cycle, and it's the way he writes it that I find it so incredible.
He really writes about emotions extremely well. Mm. This kind of a story, it's easy for it to be too sentimental, and he doesn't do that. Mm-mm. It's not sentimental. Mm-mm. It's a first-person narrative, so the story is told by Hannah. She's an old lady. She may be 80-something. She's looking back on her life.
Yep.
And parts of the story are really dramatic, because her first husband dies, and we're not going to say too much about what happens. We won't spoil the book for you, but it's early on that her first husband dies in the war, and she has some hardships growing up as a child in a poor family. Mm-hmm. But there's large parts of it where it's just happy living and happy relationships. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't usually make a good story, but it really does here, I thought.
I did too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I loved it. I loved this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite passage?
Well, I do, and you kind of alluded to it a minute ago when you talked about she lost her first husband in the Second World War, and he was
A little crooked, but keep talking.
he was found missing, and they never found his body. But she lived with his parents and the little daughter that was born to her after he left. So this quote is kind of, it's about grief, and it's about how that time when they didn't know where he was, it was such a horrible time for them because they couldn't even grieve for a person that they didn't know where he was. But this is a quote from that time. She says, "Love held us, kindness held us. We were suffering what we were living. I began to know my story then. Like everybody's, it was going to be the story of living in the absence of the dead. What is the thread that holds it all together? Grief, I thought a while. And grief there is, sure enough, just about all the way through. From the time I was a girl, I've never been far from it. But grief is not a force and has no power to hold. You only bear it. Love is what carries you. For it's always there, even in the dark or at the most dark, but shining out times like gold stitches to a piece of embroidery."
Yeah, that's a beautiful passage.
Love that passage, yeah, about grief, how they got through it.
I had trouble picking a favorite passage because there's so many, but I will share one that I shared on Instagram when I was reading it. And this is about Hannah and her second husband, and they've been farming and they're getting older. And the children have left home, but they're still very involved in their lives. And I thought this was a great quote that showed the aging process and living as older farmers, but also about desire. I thought he writes about desire beautifully. "The only people here were just this aging couple, getting a little too small for their skin, their hair turning white, standing, it might be, in the middle of the kitchen, or the garden, or the barn lot, hugging each other the way the hungry eat, in a hurry for night to fall. We still had the children to think about and worry about, of course, wherever they were, and our work always ahead of us, and the place always around us with its needs and demands. And yet, for a while there, I would think that this right now, was all the world that I held in my arms. It was like falling in love, only more than that. We knew too much by then for it to be only that. It was knowing that love was what it was, and life would not complete it, and death would not stop it. While we held each other and our old desire came upon us, eternity flew into time like a lighting dove." That's just incredible writing.
Another
Just beautiful.
Another very beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean the writing is the way he puts it together is quite wonderful.
Do you want to talk? Maybe we won't have you read it, but you really connected with the passage about the community.
The
And
community.
the community of circle of friends and family, the membership.
The membership, he called it. The thing is, I think it's almost a bygone time in communities, but it was how people were together, and the older brother or the uncle called it the membership. And so in the community, they all farmed and they did different things, and when they came to doing things, they did it together, and they traded back and forth seed, or they traded animals. When there was work to do and a lot of work to do, they got together and they did it together, and it was what Burley called, the uncle called, the membership. I love that. She talks about, Hannah talks about, you can either decide to stay in the membership, which would mean you'd live in the place that you grew up in, and you'd continue to do the kinds of things that you knew, or you decided to leave the membership, one way or the other. And so some people left the membership and some people stayed in it, like she and her, the passage that Shawn read, they had stayed in the membership and farmed until they were very elderly, till they could no longer farm.
And just to be clear, that this is a very interesting creative spin on the word membership, because it's not a membership. I mean, it's not what we think about where you pay your dues and you sign up and become a member. It's just that was the word he used for that tight-knit, lifelong community of...
Community.
Yeah.
And some of them were related and some of them were just close friends. It was neighbors and friends and relatives. It was wonderful. Way that you described it.
Web of community. So, how long have you been part of the membership where you live?
Reg and I were married in 1961, so we're coming on to, we've been married 57 years. I've been part of that membership. Shawn's father and my husband lived there his whole life. He was born on that farm that we live on, and we spend...
Lives there now.
Live there now. 5 months of the year we live there, yeah. And he's still very involved in that farming process, so, yeah.
And the farm has been there in the Mooney name since 1915?
It's actually 100 years, yeah.
It was 100
years
and a bit. So. Well, do you have anything else to say? I think we did good. I think we are going to convert a lot of people to wanting to read this book.
To read Hannah Coulter.
It's a great farm novel and community novel, and just full of emotion that isn't, and in a way that isn't schlocky or sentimental. And that's the kind of fiction that I absolutely love.
And so I'm going to go on and find more of Wendell.
Well, I think we should buddy read some more.
Okay, all right.
Maybe do another one before I come home in August.
Okay, we'll maybe do that. Good.
All right.
All right.
That's all for now. Thanks for watching.